Europe in 1914 was a continent on edge. Great powers armed to the teeth, rival alliances locked in suspicion, and a rising tide of nationalism pushing nations and people toward confrontation. Under the surface, the First World War was decades in the making. Nationalism, pride in one's nation, was not new. But by the early 20th century, it had transformed into something volatile. Across Europe, many peoples wanted independence, recognition, and power. In Germany and France, nationalism fueled competition. In the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it threatened to tear the multi-ethnic state apart. And in the Balkans, Serbian nationalism, especially the dream of a Greater Serbia, clashed directly with Austria-Hungary's imperial ambitions. Nationalism didn't just divide societies. It convinced millions that war would be glorious and short. Imperial rivalry turned nationalism into militarism. If a nation wanted to be great, it needed a powerful army and an even stronger navy. Britain and Germany built battleships at record pace. France and Germany drafted millions of young men. Politicians and generals believed that a massive war was not just possible, but inevitable. Europe had the fuel. It only needed a spark. To protect themselves, nations formed alliances. These were meant to prevent war, but they actually guaranteed that if one country fell into crisis, everyone else would be pulled in. On one side, the Triple Entente, France, Russia, and Britain. On the other, the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. A conflict between two states could suddenly become a continental catastrophe. On June 28, 1914, the spark came. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated by a Bosnian Serb nationalist in Sarajevo. Vienna blamed Serbia. Backed by Germany, Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum. Serbia resisted, and soon mobilizations began. What followed was a chain reaction. Russia mobilized to protect Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia, then France. Germany invaded Belgium. Britain declared war in response. In just over a month, the world plunged into the deadliest conflict it had ever seen. World War I did not begin with one bullet. It began with nationalism, rivalry, fear, and leaders convinced they could control the flames. Instead, they ignited a war that reshaped the world. The war reshaped the world. World War I was meant to be the war to end all wars, but instead, it opened the door to a century of chaos. Between 1914 and 1918, Europe was turned into a battlefield of mud and metal. Machine guns, poison gas, tanks, weapons the world had never seen on this scale, ripped entire generations apart. By the end, more than 20 million people were dead, and just as many wounded. A whole continent was traumatized, exhausted, and ready to unravel. When the guns finally fell silent, the political map of Europe was torn apart. Empires that had existed for centuries vanished almost overnight. The German Empire lost land to France and the newly created Poland. The Austro-Hungarian Empire shattered into a mosaic of small nations, and the Ottoman Empire lost nearly all of its territory, replaced by British and French control across the Middle East. To millions, these treaties didn't feel like peace. They felt like punishment, a humiliation that would not be forgotten. In Germany, the aftermath turned catastrophic. The country was forced to pay massive reparations. Banks collapsed under the weight of debt. Unemployment soared. And then came the hyperinflation of 1923. Money lost its value so fast that wages were carried home in bags. Savings built over a lifetime evaporated in days. Bread, one day a few marks, the next day millions. For the middle class, it was a national nightmare and a warning. Democracy couldn't protect them. Into this chaos stepped a new force, fascism, born from anger, fear, and the longing for stability. In Italy, veterans felt betrayed by a mutilated victory. Unemployment and political violence pushed many to support Mussolini, who promised order and national pride. By 1922, fascists marched on Rome, and democracy collapsed. In Germany, the humiliation of Versailles, The wounds of hyperinflation and the fear of communism created the perfect storm. Hitler and the Nazi Party exploited every grievance. The loss of territory, the economic misery, the longing to feel powerful again. They didn't rise because people wanted tyranny. They rose because people were desperate. World War I didn't just end with an armistice. It set off a chain reaction, from staggering death tolls to shattered borders to economies in freefall, and finally, to the rise of authoritarian regimes that promised strength at the cost of freedom. The Great War shaped the 20th century, not only through the battles fought, but through the crises that followed. And its consequences remind us of a simple truth. War doesn't end when the fighting stops. Its aftershocks echo for generations,